Hi everyone, so this will be our first video for the immune system. So we're going to go through probably 3 videos. We're going to start with the innate immune system, and then we'll move into the 2 features of the adaptive immune system. So this is Maddie's drawing. Immune system is too complicated to draw, so here's a skull. Okay. All right, so before we can talk about the immune system, we need to talk about what a pathogen is. Okay, so what is a pathogen? A pathogen is any disease-causing agent, which is really broad, but that's okay. So that could include things like bacteria, or virus, which is usually what people think of. You know, that kind of comes right to the top of your mind when you think about things that can make you sick. However, we also have fungal infections, amoebic and protozoan-based infections. So it's not just about bacteria and it's not just about viruses. So your immune system is designed to theoretically identify the disease-causing agent and attack it and protect you against infection. So, how does it do that? What's unusual about your immune system is it's really a functional system that more so than a structural system, because there's so many pieces to your immune system and there's so many organs that we don't traditionally think of as immune organs that are part of the system and kind of have their toe in that pool. So there's 2 broad aspects to your immune system. Okay, so when we talk about immunity, we talk about innate versus adaptive. So when we talk about the innate immune system, that's far more, it's very non-specific. If you're talking about your adaptive immune system, that is it's much more specific. So when you think about what does non-specific and specific mean, well, it's not necessarily directed at a particular agent. Some of these things are very broad spectrum, which when we start going through parts of the innate system, that'll make a lot of sense. It's also not highly specified from person to person to a large degree. A lot of the members of our innate immunity are conserved, okay, meaning they're kind of set up the same from person to person. Our adaptive immunity, while some of the players are there from person to person, because it is genetic in nature, it's much more specified. So when we think about the production of things like antibodies, those are part of the adaptive and not the innate immune system. They work together. It's not this or that, it's this and that. They work together, they talk to each other, so that if the innate immune system needs to call upon members of the adaptive immune community, it certainly can. Okay, so we're going to start with innate. All right, so let's talk about our innate immune system first. Remember, this is the non-specific. There's going to be a lot of players in our innate immune system, so let's talk very globally about them first. So, your surface barriers. So, for example, while we don't think about your skin as an immune organ, it is. So, for example, your skin, right? The pH of your skin is slightly acidic. We don't think of that so much as an immune function. However, if you think about, let's talk bacteria for a minute. Bacteria, if you've ever been in a lab, like to grow under super specific conditions, and they're very happy under certain conditions, and pH is one of them. So if you have conditions that are slightly acidic. It doesn't have to be a strong acid, it could just be a weak acid. That can be just enough to prevent not the best or most hospitable environment for bacteria to grow. So that counts as part of your innate immunity. Okay, your sebum, that's secreted by your sebaceous glands, contains a component that's a bacteriotoxin. It's not, again, you're not providing the best environment for bacteria to grow. In females, and we had talked about this when we did reproduction, vaginal secretions. Again, they're acidic. They contain mucus that kind of traps some of the bacteria. You stand up and gravity is just going to pull some of that out. That counts. Your stomach. Okay, the pH is very acidic. So when you think about your stomach acid has a pH of like 2, right? That's going to protect you from any bacteria that you may inadvertently swallow, which we do when we eat things, right? In addition, in your stomach, you have enzymes that break down protein. And because protein is an integral part of a lot of membranes of all kinds of organisms, again, we think about it more as that's great for breaking down proteins that we eat, but would also break down some of the proteins that make up some of the cell membranes and cell walls that would be damaging to bacteria and other organisms. Your saliva, your tears. Again, the saliva and your tears contain agents that just not completely prevent, but they certainly hinder bacteria's ability to thrive. So again, that counts as part of your innate immunity. Mucus in general. Anywhere where you have mucus, nasal mucus, mucus in the trachea, for example, mucus is great at acting almost like flypaper at trapping microorganisms, and when you blow your nose or cough it out, it's exiting it from your body. So that is a big part of your immune system as well. Okay, so that's all the surface barriers. That is all innate. Again, because it's not really directed at a specific pathogenic agent, it's not just going after one type of bacteria. These are kind of broad spectrum. And also, all of us possess these items. Okay, then your internal defenses. So we have some internal things that are conserved. And again, these are things that we all possess. Cells that are macrophages. Okay, that are phagocytes. Okay, phage means hunger. And so a phagocyte is going to ingest site for cell, is going to ingest another cell. Macrophages, like your neutrophils. Will identify items that don't belong to you, right? That they're invaders, and will kind of just go ahead and eat them and get rid of them. The neutrophils, remember, were your dominant white blood cell. This should make sense to you now because they're those background warriors. Those are the ones that you want at the front line, kind of cleaning things up in the background. We had our eosinophils. That took care of parasitic worms, right? But probably my favorite, just because their name is excellent, are your NK cells. Your natural killer. Perfect. Okay, so the natural killer cells, again, these are cells that we have, all of us. These are part of your innate immunity. These are kind of defensive cells, and the way that they work, they're not macrophages. The way that they work is kind of really incredible. So these cells, where are they first? They're in blood and they're in your lymphatic fluid. Okay, so they're in two spots. What they can do is detect the difference between kind of self and non-self. They can pick up the fact that an invading organism doesn't have the correct complement of proteins that identifies it as you, as yourself. Okay, so instead of just engulfing the cell, they actually release chemicals that punch holes in the cell, which is amazing. And then, of course, the cell, because its membrane integrity has been disrupted, dies. So it's kind of cool. It can protect you against virus-infected cells. So cells where the virus has already taken over the host, and cancer cells. So it can identify these as no good, and we'll go after them in a different way, but we'll kill them nonetheless, which is kind of cool. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about one of the most important things that's part of your innate immune system, and that is inflammation. Okay. There's a lot of confusion around inflammation. People think inflammation is bad, okay? So when we think about inflammation, we have to think about kind of two general types. You have acute inflammation, which is what we're going to focus on, and then you have chronic. Chronic inflammation is the one that is not good, but acute inflammation is beneficial for a variety of reasons, okay? So we want to start with, what is it? What is inflammation? How do we define it? It is your tissue's response to injury. All right, so if we would like to go and injure ourselves, how can we do it? Well, you can do it any number of ways, of course. So I'm going to give you some examples of types of injury. So for example, a burn would be a type of injury, right? Your exposure to intense heat, exposure to intense chemicals. Okay, it could be infection. Okay, it could be something like a cut, simple. Okay, however, it doesn't really matter how you get to the injury. The fact is, you're injured. Your body, your tissue, is going to respond in a very specific way to the fact that you've been injured. Why do we do inflammation? So the main goal behind inflammation, and again, we're talking acute inflammation, is to do a couple of things. It's meant to, so why do it? Okay, we want to prevent spreading. If it's an infectious agent that's triggering the inflammation, you don't want it to go any further. So we want to try to wall it off so it doesn't spread to other parts of the body. Okay, we want to dispose of debris if present. So any cellular debris as a result of injury or any pathogens that are present, we want to get rid of them. And then we want to promote healing. We want to set the stage so that we can start to repair the tissue. Okay? So there are 4 signs of acute inflammation. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to tell you why they are important and what their role is. So, okay. So we have 4 signs, and again, this is acute inflammation. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And we're just going to keep it simple. So you have redness, heat, swelling, and then pain. Okay, so here's our 4 signs. And if you've ever, you could go to the oven, turn it on, put your thumbs on the oven. Okay, boom, burning, you did it. I'm kidding, don't do that. But you would see redness, you would have heat, you would have swelling, and I would hope you would have pain and take your hand away from the stove. So why are these items happening? Okay, so that's important. You really want to understand the why they're happening, because then you'll be better able to understand when they go wrong or don't happen appropriately. So if you would like to, remember, one of the goals is to promote healing, right? So if you would like to heal your tissue, you have to think about what you need to bring to the party to make that happen, okay? In addition, we want to get rid of debris, and we want to kill any pathogenic agents that have entered space, okay? To do that, we need to increase the flow of blood and fluid to the area of injury. Okay, when you do that, okay, things are going to turn red, they're going to get warm to the touch, and of course you would have swelling because you're having fluid build up in a confined space. Okay, the outlier is pain. Okay, pain is one of my favorite subjects for a variety of reasons, but pain is our outlier. It really serves, in the short term, it serves a purpose. Chronic long-term pain doesn't really serve a purpose in terms of healing. But you can see that if you had an acute injury, pain is supposed to do what? It's supposed to tell you there's a problem. Many people want to cover up or mask pain following injury, and I completely understand that no one wants to be in pain. But the level of pain is sometimes perhaps indicating the level of problem, right? So if someone has a paper cut, we kind of know that level of pain and know it's just a paper cut versus a gash in your hand. By understanding pain and levels of pain, it helps you better assess what type of injury you're dealing with and the seriousness of the injury that you're dealing with. I think people fear pain. I don't think, I think there's a lot of reasons why that's true. Now, that being said, chronic pain, okay, is not really beneficial to any organism. And so that, again, a subject for another time. But acute pain has a value. It has an adaptive value. It's meant to tell you that something's wrong, and it's meant to give you a measure of what exactly and how serious the thing that's wrong is, okay? You have to think like early man or an animal. They touch something, it hurts, they know not to touch it again. It was kind of teaching you lessons, okay? So it's important. So, how do we go through the steps of inflammation? Step one, you have to hurt yourself. Okay, so we're going to assume we already took care of that. Okay, step two, we're going to release some chemical mediators that are going to help guide inflammation. Okay, so step one was hurt self. Step two, you need some chemical mediators that are going to help do some of the things that we need in order to promote healing. So for example, something like histamine is released. Okay, so that's going to go up. What histamine will do is it promote vasodilation. That's important. If you open up the blood vessels to the area of injury, that allows more blood to flow to the area. And again, we're trying to clean up debris, get rid of pathogens, and promote healing. So we need blood to the area. What better way to do it than to dilate the blood vessels to the area of injury? Okay, we increase the permeability of capillaries. That's where the swelling is going to come into play. Okay, we also are going to release things like bradykinin. And prostaglandins. Prostaglandins will induce kind of spasming, vasospasms in the area. Again, that's talking to our blood vessels, letting them know that we need to increase flow to the area, but also, so it promotes movement. These work together to help induce pain. Okay. There are a couple of different types of prostaglandins, which is a discussion for another time. But aspirin. What aspirin does is blocks one of the enzymes involved in the production of prostaglandins, and by doing that, it helps to relieve pain and relieve inflammation. Okay, so we're going to dilate blood vessels to the injured area. And by dilating blood vessels to the injured area, we're increasing blood flow, okay? So, this is going to result in, and I'm kind of oversimplifying, that's okay, edema. So, you're going to have swelling. You're going to have an increase of flow of fluid to the area of injury, and that's going to cause edema or swelling. Okay, so why is that important? Again, we're talking acute injury. So edema, what's its value? Your body doesn't do things in a vacuum, right? It has to have some value. It has to have some worth in order for your body to go through it, right? You're doing all these steps. None of them are for free. To produce things like histamine and bradykinins and prostaglandins, you have to have enzymes in place. This requires energy to be expended. So your body's not going to do all of these things unless there's some value add and some buy-in, so to speak, okay? So why would you have swelling? The first reason is dilution. It can help dilute any harmful substances that have entered into the area upon injury, okay? It's going to bring in oxygen and nutrients. You have this big influx of fluid to an area that's loaded with oxygen and with nutrients. You can see this is going to promote, right, healing. Okay, it's going to help promote healing. And will also allow the entry of clotting proteins. Now, we don't know if we need them. We don't know if we cut ourselves. But what if we did? We want to make sure that we have the proteins available so that we can encourage blood clotting in the event that there has been injury to the skin or a blood vessel that needs to be repaired, right? So we want to bring these to the party just in case we need them. Okay, so again, this is where the value of edema comes into place. You have to have some sort of value to it, otherwise you wouldn't expend the energy to go through it, okay? Okay, so we're going to stop there. That gives us the major signs of acute inflammation. Our next video, we'll talk about what happens after inflammation and then move into the elements of the adaptive immunity.